Welcome to another episode of In Your Business, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories and strategies behind successful Huntington area enterprises. I'm your host, Reeves Kurtner. Season 2 of In Your Business is presented by Moses Auto Mall of Huntington, online at mosesmeansmore.com, and powered by the Huntington Regional Chamber of Commerce and Kindred Communications. Today we're exploring a topic that's both timeless and timely, the state of print media in the digital age. Joining me today is a true veteran of the industry, the founder and president of Huntington Quarterly Publishing, Jack Houvarous. With a diverse portfolio that includes the Huntington Quarterly Magazine, Marshall Magazine, and several specialized publications, Jack has seen the evolution of print firsthand and has navigated the challenges and triumphs that come with it. We discuss print's place in today's media world, the challenges and opportunities for print, and how regional publications can not only survive but thrive in this rapidly changing landscape. Let's get in your business. Well, Jack, thanks for doing this, and excited to talk about Huntington Quarterly and Huntington Quarterly Publishing, and talk about print as well. But let's start with the origin story for Huntington Quarterly, and now what it's become since then.
Well, it started in 1989. Back then, the local newspaper was very negative, unlike it is today. It was Gannett owned, and I just came up with this idea after being editor of the Parthenon. I loved that feeling of being in control of the editorial process, creative process. So I thought, let's try a magazine in Huntington. And people really ate it up because it was positive. Yeah. I was telling them positive stories of Huntington. If they wanted to read all the negative stuff, they would open up the newspaper. Okay. Again, that's not the way it is today.
I understand.
But so I went around and started selling ads door to door, and 9 out of 10 people I asked for an ad took an ad. And then I was off and running.
Right. What was it? Was it obviously a quarterly magazine then too?
Yeah, I thought about doing a monthly, and then I met with Marshall Reynolds, a very esteemed businessman here in town, and he talked me out of the monthly thing. Okay. And then I just scaled it back to quarterly, and then I remember the next time I saw him at his printing plant, he was printing at the time. Yes. He said, "Congratulations on making your dream come true." Right. It's really cool.
Yeah. What the magazine looked like in '89 versus what it, the way that it's formatted, laid out today?
Not good.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
We've come a long way. Yeah. When I started, we had my only investment really was a Macintosh SE computer, which was this small little box with a 9-inch monochrome monitor. Yep. And I remember back then dreaming of the day that I could actually look at a 2-page spread layout in color that would look exactly the way it looked in the magazine. I didn't think that would ever happen. Sure. But it did.
Yeah. Now, how big's your monitor now?
Like 26 inches.
Yeah.
So, but back then you had bitmap fonts, so they didn't really look exactly the way they look when they come out. Okay. And you just had black boxes where you put pictures. You couldn't actually see the photograph. Right. But obviously technology's come a long way.
I worked for the Parthenon as well, and in high school I worked for our school newspaper, the Medieval Times at Cabell Midland.
I like that.
Medieval Times, yeah, we're the Knights. Right. And but when I was in school from '96 to 2000 at Cabell Midland, but we used those old Macs, like the little 5 or 6 inch screen. Yeah, it was. Technology was obviously, it was there, but it wasn't what it was today, and there weren't all these grants for computers, so we were using old little Macs. But the reason I say that is I have that appreciation. I semi-know what you're talking about and what you dealt with, but we laid the entire paper out, wrote everything on those little Macs, and it was cool.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. But yeah, as you said, things have gotten a lot better now. So talk about the magazine. You talk about it. Huntington was the newspaper was negative back then. And your goal then, I guess your mission was to tell the good stories. Has that changed, or what's the mission today, or what's the goal of the magazine today?
Exact same goal. We don't get into politics or anything negative, and one time I had a local economic development director talk me into putting Byrd, Rockefeller, and Rahal on the cover about the future of West Virginia. Okay. And it was a nice article, several articles actually. But anyway, it was the worst selling issue we've ever had.
Because of the politics.
Yeah. Now, it was positive about the future of West Virginia, but it had 3 politicians on the cover.
Yeah. Talk about some other memorable issues, and some of your covers have become iconic. I mean, I can picture the one with Randy Moss and Chad Pennington on the cover. That one just sticks out in my mind. But talk about some memorable moments and issues that you've had over those last 35 years.
Oh boy, well that was one of the most, if not the most popular one. We got I had like 6 or 7 extra copies of that framed and autographed by Pennington, Moss,
and Pruitt.
He
was on that as well. That's right.
And I gave them to some special people in my life, including I gave one to Jim's Restaurant because they had always been so nice to me. And somebody stole it off the wall.
Oh gosh.
But that's a compliment.
Yeah, that's right. I guess. Yeah, right.
We did a story when Paul Newman came to Huntington in 1966. He was preparing for a role in the movie Cool Hand Luke. And I got Esquire to sell me a photograph they'd taken of him, and it's really cool. It's a black and white photo. We Are Marshall. I wasn't crazy about the poster they did for We Are Marshall, so we kind of did our own where we had headshots of the main characters on the cover.
Yeah.
And that was a big seller. We ordered a few extra 1,000 copies for the newsstands, and they sold out in 2 days.
Yeah.
So then I ordered another 5,000. They sold out in 3 days.
Wow.
So then I ordered 10,000. Sales stopped.
Okay. All right. So you learn what the number was.
Got a lot of extra copies of that one.
Yeah. Obviously, some timely stories. Like I'm looking at your most recent issue, and it's on the future of 4th Avenue and the Innovation District. So that's obviously a timeliness story and a feature. Where do you get your ideas, your inspiration for your more feature type stories that you've done?
People ask me that a lot. I get them from my readers sometimes. I'll be walking down the street sometimes, and someone will stop me and say, "Hey, I got a story idea for you." They're not always good ideas.
Of course not.
But a lot of them are.
Yeah.
Marshall University is a great source.
Of course.
The healthcare we have in Huntington, there's always interesting things going on at the hospitals or some interesting doctor or nurse. Homes. We don't seem to run out.
Yes, sure. Of course.
People think we're going to run out, but next week they're opening. We're having a grand opening for the new Cyber Institute over there on 4th Avenue. It's a $45 million they got to build that thing.
That's right.
It's going to be something impressive.
Yeah. You talk about, again, 35 years ago when the magazine started, and you said the newspaper was negative. 35 years ago, there weren't a lot of great things happening in this area. I take it back. There were negative things going on in this area. However, I feel like in the last 5 or 10 years, a lot of positive stories, and there's a lot to be optimistic about. Is it more fun today than it was 35 years ago?
It's not as challenging. Let's put it that way.
More stories out there. More positive. You're not digging as hard, I guess.
No, I'm not having to reach.
Yeah. Not having to spin.
Right.
Right. Like yes.
Brad Smith at Marshall is just awesome.
That's right.
Healthcare is booming here.
That's right.
We have our challenges, but every community does.
Absolutely.
We talk about the opioid crisis. It just didn't affect Appalachia.
No.
I mean, it hit Connecticut. It hit California. Washington, everywhere, So
yeah, that's right.
We're doing our best to handle it.
Well, let's talk about how now HQ Publishing has transformed. So was just Huntington Quarterly Magazine. Now you're doing Marshall Magazine, right? You're doing magazines for the hospitals. West Virginia Lawyer Magazine. Talk about that, your portfolio, and how did all that happen? When did all that start? Like, hey, we can take on some other projects and more revenue streams.
I have to give credit to a guy named John Drinko. We did a story on him. Marshall came to me and said, we've lost touch with one of our donors he was the first person to give us $1 million. And we'd like you to do a story on him, to help kind of bring him back into the fold at Marshall.
For the Quarterly?
For the Quarterly. They didn't have their own magazine back then.
Okay.
So I said, sure. And then they asked me to put him on the cover. And I was like, well, I don't know. He's not from Huntington. He was from somewhere else in the state, and he didn't live here anymore. He was a lawyer in Cleveland. But I said, if it's going to help Marshall, then I'll do it.
Okay.
Well, it paid off because he started giving money back to Marshall.
Okay.
He gave him enough money to name the library after him.
That's right.
And then when they started their own magazine in 1999, he told them, this magazine isn't up to your standards. You need to get the guy who does the Huntington Quarterly to do your magazine.
Okay.
So that's how I got that magazine, I think.
Was that the first one that you had done?
Yeah, I hadn't done one for him. And so
no, what I meant was that the first magazine you had done outside of
Huntington Quarterly? That was the first magazine we took into our fold.
Okay.
And then we added, we did the hospitals. Well, we don't do them anymore.
Okay.
We do the West Virginia State Bar, their magazine, the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce, and the med school, the Marshall University Med School.
What was the timeline on kind of getting all those? Like when you did the Marshall magazine around 99,
and maybe 5 years later we got the State Bar.
Yeah.
And then another 5 years we got the med school, and then another 5 years we got the Chamber of Commerce.
What how is your time divided up between all those different publications?
Equally.
Okay.
We have crunch time where things are pretty hectic, and then we have some downtime.
Okay.
We put out 15 different issues a year, so because they're not all quarterly, some are 3 times a year, some are 4. It keeps us busy, but not crazy busy.
How big is your staff?
4.
4. Okay.
5 counting me.
Got it. So, and just help me out in the process. When you're doing like a magazine for Marshall, it's telling the great. Do you do the Marshall Alumni magazine or now they've kind of combined into one magazine? Is that right?
Well, their magazine that we do is their alumni. They have some other smaller publications that are for special departments, but
yes.
The big one that goes to, it used to be 70,000 people. Now it's been reduced. Mailing postage has gotten crazy.
Of course, that's right.
But yeah, we've done that since 99, so 25 years now.
So when you're doing a magazine for Marshall, obviously Marshall wants to get their story out, right? All the great and positive things. We want you to focus on this alum who's done something great. How do you work together with Marshall to put those stories together, put those issues together?
They would have a meeting with their editorial board, and they would ask me to come, and they're the boss.
Yeah, that's right.
So I would sit there and take notes, and then they'd ask for if I had any ideas, and I pitched some that they used over the past. And then, a week or 2 later, they'd send me the story assignments. They'd say, these are the 7 or 8 or 9 stories we want to do.
Okay.
And then we'd go out and start photographing, interviewing, writing the stories, laying it out. And then they would take a look at it and sign off on it.
And they get the final approval.
Exactly.
Do you ever have stories where they say no and they're like, well, I'll do it for the quarterly then? There's definitely that fine line, right?
There has been times when I did a story in my magazine I didn't tell them about, and then they felt like I stole it from them.
Yeah. Well, hey, so
I thought of it first.
Right. It was my idea. So, like I said, there's a fine line between
there is.
and
Now I ask them ahead of time. I'm like, is it okay if I go ahead and do a story on so and so?
Yeah. Hey, where Marshall goes is where Huntington goes.
I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship.
It is. So let's talk about the current state of print media. How is the current state of print media? Let me just ask that. In this region, in this market, what's your view on print right now?
The latest statistics I read a couple of years ago were that while print is on the decline, it's not as bad for magazines as it is for newspaper. So today, the latest stats I read were that 30% of newspaper readers prefer print, while 70% prefer digital. Okay. Now, our local newspaper offers both, as most do.
That's right.
But with print, with magazines, it's different. It's 70% prefer the print edition of the magazine, while 30% prefer the digital.
What do you think that is?
I think it's a nicer quality product when it comes to a magazine, the color photos. I'm not sure beyond that. It's a quality issue, I think.
It feels nicer.
Yeah.
It's going to last longer, right?
True.
I mean, you can put this in a doctor's office, and it's going to have 20
It has
more.
a shelf life of at least 3 months.
That's right. What role do you see print media playing in today's landscape?
Well, I like that we're at 70% now with print and 30% with digital. I can make money either way as long as somebody's willing to advertise and buy a subscription.
That's right.
I like print. I think a lot of people do. I don't know if it's going to continue to level off or it will on a decline, but either way, as long as people are reading and consuming, and advertisers want to support that, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I don't have a magic ball I can look into and say where it's going to be in 10 years.
Well, and again, you and I, it's kind of like radio's our bread and butter, right? It's my company's bread and butter. We've moved into the digital world as well, and more revenue streams, and because you have to, you know. But I get the same questions on the future of radio and all that kind of stuff, and it's just like we're hanging in there. I mean, I've got a number of positive stories and statistics and so forth I can show you, and it still works, and it must work for you too, because I'm sure most of your advertisers are repeat. They're in there issue and issue out, or they wouldn't be coming back if it wasn't. Right.
Well, I'm lucky that, like I said, magazines aren't as big on the decline as newspaper.
That's right.
But yeah, we're all fighting to get used to the new digital world where everybody wants everything for free.
That's true.
I remember when the internet first came out, everything was free. Now, as it should be, if you want to read certain content, you have to pay a small amount. I mean, for us, it's $9 a year to have a digital subscription.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about your demographics of your readers of the quarterly? who is reading the magazine? What do the demographics look like now?
They're an older reader. Usually the average age is 56. They're wealthy with an income of, I'm trying to remember the last time, $170,000? No, not quite that much.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the $125,000 a year range. 90% have an investment portfolio.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, a high demographic as far as their wealth and disposable income.
So talk about your advertisers that do advertise. So they're going for that crowd. It a lot of business to business type advertisers too. Support your magazine.
Correct, and some high end products that you might not do so well advertising in the newspaper. Let's say Cadillac. There's a lot of readers from the Herald Dispatch, but only so many can afford
That's right.
to buy a Cadillac.
Yeah, that's right.
So we end up being competitive there.
Yeah.
If you want to redo your house or your kitchen, there's advertisers who offer those kind of services.
That's right.
Hospitals are always advertising.
Sure.
A lot of high-end readers for high-end advertisers.
Yeah. Talk about 35 years now of history. What have been some of your challenges over those 35 years? Digital is one, and it sounds like you've you're got a plan in place for that. But what are some of the other challenges that you've had to deal with?
COVID was tough because supply.
Yeah,
and
talk about that.
My printing prices went through the roof after that because we couldn't get paper, and if you could, it was expensive, and it hasn't really come down.
Really?
Yeah, and that was tough. 2008, when the stock market crashed, a lot of people stopped advertising. Those have been the biggest challenges, I think.
Yeah, I mean, how have you overcome expensive paper? And start there. I mean, how did you overcome a problem like that?
Well, Marshall Reynolds taught me you can make money two ways. You increase sales or cut costs. So if you can't increase sales during a recession, then you cut costs.
That's right.
I showed my budget one time to my accountant. He goes, I think you got this pared down about as far as you can.
Right.
So you do that, and you hang on and you hope. I don't think we've ever needed a home equity loan. We got one in case we needed it. I don't mean home equity loan. I'm sorry. A
line of credit.
Line of credit.
Mm-hmm.
We had one in place a couple of times that we were worried we might not be able to make payroll, but we've never had to use it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're fortunate.
Yeah. What I mean, talk about. Can you share? And I'm not asking for dollars and cents, but what's the highs and lows over those last 35 years? I mean, how's the revenue been? Consistent with inflation and all that kind of fun stuff?
I think we peaked not recently. It would have to have been maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. And
then because of the dip in print digital a little bit, and then the rising cost of printing, things have come down. But we're still doing fine.
Obviously.
We've had a couple issues where we did really well. We did 125 great things about Huntington, and everybody wanted to advertise in that issue, which was really, it's nice to see that people are that loyal to Huntington.
Yeah.
And other than that, we haven't had too many tough times.
So, man, how do you sell the magazine? It sell it by year when you can. You love those people, right, that are going to buy all 4 issues for the year. But when you go, hey, we've got this special issue. We're going to do 125 things on Huntington. We're going to do a Marshall football issue or whatever. You should be a part of this. Is that how you do the process? You do that emotional, you need to be a part of this because we're focusing on X.
Well, in the old days, we would send letters, and then we'd make phone calls. Nowadays, it's not as personal, but everybody wants to do email, obviously, or text.
Yeah.
So they get a letter saying, this is going to be our next cover story on whatever.
Yeah.
And then we list all the other stories. Then we give them some numbers, we have 5,000 readers. This is their average age and demographic. If I think there's something in there that they might like, then I underline it or make a special note of it. So, and they don't always advertise, obviously.
Yeah.
But when you have a really good cover story, it helps.
Yeah. What other cover stories can stick out where that was one where people were really excited about? 125 good things going on about Huntington. That Randy Moss issue we talked about too.
Yeah, We Are Marshall.
We Are Marshall, yeah.
Whenever we have an anniversary, people around here are really cool that they take an ad congratulating us.
Okay.
Now, they're not going to do that all the time. They're going to do it every 5 or 10 years.
That's right.
My 25th anniversary, I remember we had a really good issue. We sold a lot of ads, made a lot of money. And then my staff talked me into throwing a party for our 25th anniversary, which cut into those profits.
Of course it did, yeah.
I don't know why I agreed to that.
Yes. Throwing a party for, hey, we're in this for business. What do we do?
You know, free drinks and food, and it went away pretty quickly.
Are there other regional magazines? Like, I know the answer is yes, but are there other regional magazines like this across the country that you subscribe to or look to for for influence, for ideas, or maybe even people you talk to for advice about their businesses?
No, I get subscriptions to a lot of the city and state magazines around the country. I used to belong to an organization called the City and Regional Magazine Association.
Okay.
And they would get together and brainstorm 3 times a year. And it was a really cool group, but it got to be kind of expensive. And a lot of the things they were doing, you couldn't do in Huntington.
Right.
You couldn't have an American Express restaurant week in Huntington.
That's right.
You can't do top doctors issue or top lawyers issue in Huntington. You could do one, and then you would be dead after that.
That's right. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
So a lot of the things that they were doing, I couldn't replicate. But I learned a lot there, and they used to tease me a lot from being from West Virginia, #1, and being only a quarterly.
Okay.
So we were having this one meeting, and they were really razzing me. I kind of stood up and I said, anybody can start a magazine in Atlanta, Georgia, and make a ton of money. I said, you try doing a quarterly in Huntington, West Virginia, making a go of it, and then I'll be impressed.
That's right.
And they all went, ooh.
Yeah, but Jack, but 35 years, that's amazing. I mean, for any business to last 5 years or 10 years. And, Kindred, we just celebrated our 32nd year. And I'll pat myself on our back for that. I mean, I've been a part of this place for about 20 years now, and my dad was one of the founders of it. But gosh darn it, man, that's really impressive. And we've been radio and print, we've been dying for years, and here we are, we're still standing and doing some good things. So that really is amazing. And you're right on the thing about Atlanta or Charlotte or whatever. A lot easier down there.
Yeah.
More money, more content, whatever. But for 35 years, man, that's really, really special. Do you have a special edition for this year for your 35th?
That's our next issue, actually.
So your fall issue will be the number 35. Yeah.
Correct.
That's awesome.
I think the cover story is going to be 35 Reasons Huntington Rocks.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I had to do something with 35. I didn't want to just pat us on the back.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done that in the past. So.
What can you tell me 1 or 2 things about Huntington that rocks? That'll be in there?
I mean, the obvious one: Ritter Park, Marshall University, the healthcare we have here. I mean, those are obvious choices. Yeah. I'll leave the more.
Of course,
it's going to be hard to actually pare it down to 35.
Absolutely,
I know some people would say, "How's that pop?"
Yes, no, that's easily. I could rattle off 10 or 15 really quickly there. So, what do you see overall? And let's not specifically talk about your magazine, but let's talk about magazines. Where do you see the future of print magazines? What's your future?
Well, they're going to have to be a hybrid between print and digital, but that's still content. That's substantive articles, beautiful photography, great layout, more in-depth articles than you're going to see in a newspaper or somewhere else. We get a chance sometimes to not just do fun stories like about Randy Moss or Chad Pennington. We get to do some really serious stuff like Carter G. Woodson. I had actually done a story on him many, many years ago and didn't put him on the cover because back then we were putting beautiful pictures on the cover. And I always regretted that. Mm-hmm. So then I thought, well, I can do him again, even though, he's been done before. And then I thought, I'm going to put him on the cover. And there weren't any great photographs of him out there. So I hired this local artist, Sasa Wilkes, who did an amazing painting of him and put it on the cover. Yeah. It didn't sell a ton of advertising, but that was a story that needed to be told. And it's something I can look back on one day and say, I'm really glad I gave him the credit he deserves.
That's awesome. How do you balance that of, I know this isn't going to be a sexy issue, but that story needs to be told, versus the sexy Marshall issue or the sexy 125. How do you balance those decisions?
Tough. I mean, maybe once a year I might do a cover story that, now inside I can do, doesn't matter. If I have 10 general interest stories that people love and I have one that's, a passion project, that's fine.
Yeah.
We did a great story one time I'm really proud of where my brother Rick was at Marshall during the Young Thundering Herd days. And he knew all the guys who came up from Tuscaloosa. They were called the Tuscaloosa Five from Alabama. Now, 4 of them died in the Marshall plane crash, and Reggie Oliver did not because he missed that flight.
Yep.
Those 4 were all very much recruited by Bear Bryant at Alabama, but he couldn't put them on the team because they were not taking any black players back in 1969.
Wow.
A year later, after he invited USC to come to Alabama and play, and they beat them badly at Alabama, he decided, and the state decided, okay, we're going to start recruiting black athletes.
Okay.
Had that happened a year earlier, those 4 young men wouldn't have died.
That's right.
It's sad.
It's crazy.
And that's a great story to be told.
That's right. That's a phenomenal story to be told. Talk about, Jack, the importance of being local. I mean, I think that's, for your medium, that's a huge part, obviously, of your success. But I think for a number of other magazines, that's a huge advantage as well too. Yeah,
I mean, we try to go beyond just Huntington because there's some cool things going on in Barbersville and Milton and Sarita Canova and across the borders. But people like the fact that it's local. They like that Huntington has its own magazine because, usually a city this size would not have a magazine.
You don't think so? I mean, we're small for a magazine like this?
Yeah, very small, actually. So, but the people here, the businesses and the subscribers, they really support it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think it would have made it. But they're really proud of being from Huntington, and they're tired of the stereotypes being associated with being in Huntington or being in West Virginia.
Yep.
And they like seeing something that makes them, that they can hand this magazine to a friend and say, this is where I'm from.
Yeah.
You can tease me all you want, but and they look at the magazine and like, whoa, this is.
That's right. Yeah.
Some people say you make it look better than it really is. I don't care.
It's okay. I mean, I know you're a Marshall grad. Are you originally from Huntington?
Yes.
You're born and raised in Huntington. Same thing. I mean, I've said this on this podcast a number of times. Same thing. Born here, moved away for 10 years, then I came back, and I've been here pretty much ever since. And for the last 30 plus years, there was a time I would hear those West Virginia jokes and those Huntington jokes or whatever, and I'd kind of take them. But now, again, it's like what's been happening and the stories that you're helping to tell too. It's like it's just a lot of positive stuff, going on here right now. And so you come to Huntington, you're like, this is West Virginia? I'm like, yeah, and West Virginia's got more places than just what's going on here in Huntington too. Let's go to Lewisburg or Fayetteville and Thomas and Davis, West Virginia, and all those Canadian Valley and all those great places. A lot of positive stories going on, right now.
It's a beautiful state.
Yeah, it is.
It has a lot to offer.
It is. What do you still love about print still to this day?
I love that feeling when it comes off the presses and you first get it and you open it up and it looks as good as you wanted it to look. I love the fact that you'll run into people that will say, I read your last issue, that was a great editorial, or that was a great story you did on the Tuscaloosa 5.
Sure.
Making an impact, and making a difference too. Sometimes you get a chance to promote a charity or something going on in the community that not everybody knows about, and then we did a story one time called 5 Unique Eateries.
Okay.
And they were just little places like Benji's Harley Davidson when they first opened their diner, and then Central City Cafe, and a few others. But I remember the guy from Central City Cafe told me I had to expand after your article came out.
Really?
And I was like, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it helped his business.
Yeah, that is what you love it. Could a magazine like this be started today?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it might have been harder back when I did it.
Why's that?
Well, not harder. A year before I started, it might have been very difficult because the Macintosh computer hadn't really come out in Huntington yet.
Okay.
My last semester at Marshall, they introduced the Mac.
Okay.
Had I not been able to do all the layout myself on a Mac, I would have had to pay the printer a lot more money.
Okay.
To do it for me.
Really?
Yeah. So in that way, it was harder back then. But
so the printer it wouldn't take Macs.
You would have to pay him to. They didn't have them either.
That's what I meant.
I had a Mac before my local printer did.
That's what I meant. So they could not print your magazine because it was a Mac print.
They had to
laid it out in Mac.
They had to typeset it all themselves.
Yes.
And count the number of letters and characters that were going to go in a column inch and all that good stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait. So when you were going to Marshall and you told me the idea of like you were fired up because the newspaper was negative. What did you originally obviously print, I'm assuming, if you were working for the Parthenon, all that kind of stuff. What did you originally go to school for? What did you originally want to do when you were at Marshall?
I wasn't sure when I went. A lot of these young kids today that I talk to seem to know what they want to do. I didn't really know until I started dating a girl, and she took a journalism 101 class, and I took it because she took it.
That's funny.
And Boz Johnson was the professor, and he was awesome.
Yeah.
And then I started writing for the Parthenon, and when my first article got published, I remember going to Marshall at like 6:30 in the morning to see it. And then I was hooked after that.
Yeah.
But, I left the area for a while to go to law school, and I remember how much I missed Huntington. And after a semester, I ended up dropping out and starting the magazine. It wasn't for me. But when I would drive back from law school and pull into the Huntington area, I'd hear the local Get Up and Go show with Clint McElroy and Steve Hayes.
Sure, yep.
And I remember laughing so hard and thinking, man, this city's got so much going for it.
It does.
I don't know why people are so down on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me go back to all the other magazines that you're involved with, Marshall Magazine. Do you have any more potential avenues like that coming up in the future, or would you want any?
We're always trying, but the pros and cons of being in Huntington are there are a lot of advantages, and then sometimes there's some drawbacks. You don't have as many businesses and opportunities. There's only one big hospital system, really.
That's right. No, that's right.
There's one great university, so I can't be doing multiple different university magazines.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to do another hospital magazine, I would have to get permission because you can't. You got to have a non-compete.
Of course, that's right.
So
they wouldn't like that.
There's only so many opportunities out there, but I'm not going to mention any names. But we're always pitching ideas to people.
Yeah, sure. How long have you been doing the Chamber of Commerce?
I think 4 years now.
Okay. Was that magazine around?
No,
so you started that magazine as well.
Now, yeah, I pitched that one to them, and they started doing it, and it's done really well. The State Bar, they had a magazine, but it was black and white. So I went to them and said, "Hey, we can do this in color," and this, and they said, "Okay."
Let me go back to with Marshall and State Bar and Chamber, like on advertising. Are you selling the advertising for that, or do they? How's the revenue share? And
we do it all.
We do it all, and then you're giving them a portion of the advertising in it, or?
Well, it depends. We have a clause in a lot of them. If we exceed this much, then you all get half. Okay. But the way it normally works is like if we get paid a low fee, then we keep all the advertising.
Okay,
sales.
got it.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
So
and then the benefit for a Marshall is we're telling the Marshall story, or we're telling the Chamber story, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Right. Like it's the messenger type thing.
A couple of magazines we do don't have advertising. So
Which can you name one?
The med school.
Okay.
And the hospitals. We don't do the hospitals anymore. They've cut back, as you know, when they merged. But they didn't have advertising. Now the other ones, that helps offset their costs.
That's right.
But it's on us to sell the advertising.
Got it. Yeah.
The system's real easy. Here's the way it works. If this radio station wanted to do a magazine, which I wouldn't advise because you don't need to. But anyway,
yes.
I would say here's how it works. You send me your story ideas, or we sit down, discuss them. Then all you have to do after that is proofread the articles. We do everything else. We'll do the writing, the photography, we'll sell the advertising, and once you sign off on it, that's all you got to do. Tell us what to do, sign off on it.
Yeah, sure. What are your goals for Huntington Quarterly and Huntington Quarterly Publishing in the next 5 years?
I hope to retire in 5 years.
Oh, yeah? Is it okay? Well, if you hope to retire, what's the future after that? Sell it off? Do you have a succession plan?
I have a succession plan. There's a young lady that was my managing editor, a Jaeger scholar, very bright. She'd do a great job.
Okay.
So we've already talked, and when I'm ready to step down, I think she's ready to step up. She has children, so once they get to be of a certain age.
I understand.
So I think she'll do a great job, and then I'll just kind of like help out however I can.
Yeah.
I know you, so if I wanted to sell you an ad and she doesn't know you, I might say, I'll call him for you.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, pull back, right, during that transition period.
Yeah, but not be there all the time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. What, on terms of the day-to-day stuff, what do you enjoy the most? Like, if you could only do that one part, what would that be?
Believe it or not, I like the design part.
Really?
I'm not a trained graphic designer, but I've learned a lot over the years. I took a couple of classes at the J School on those little tiny Macs.
That's right, yeah.
And so I know somewhat what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty good at cover design, but that's the fun part.
That's right.
You're toying around, you're trying different things. Advertising sales can be fun, but sometimes it really isn't.
That's right.
You know how it is.
I
It's
do.
like hearing no so many times.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you want to shake him, like, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean no? So, no, yeah.
Brainstorming for story ideas, that's fun.
Sure.
Proofreading isn't always fun.
No.
But you learn a lot doing it.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. Do you catch a mistake when it goes to print? And
Oh,
how do
yeah.
you react to that?
Well, we have a great proofreader now.
Okay.
The young woman I was telling you about.
Yep.
She's a Jaeger scholar. But, we've had mistakes get through.
Right. Has AI... Are you embracing artificial intelligence? Is that
No.
Not yet? No. I mean, talk about that. That was a hard no.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, please.
Somebody...
It's a crazy world.
My fiance's son, who's in college, loves it. ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
I wrote a letter in ChatGPT, and I looked at it, and it was so over the top, flowery, and way longer than it needed to be, and I just wasn't impressed.
I got it.
But I'm a writer.
I got it. Jack, I know. It's just. I use it a lot. If I need an idea for something, right? Give me 5 ideas I need to do for this, and it will spit them out for me. And on your letter thing, yeah, you're right. It will come out long and flowery and whatever. You can say, hey, make this a little bit less formal, make it a little bit shorter.
I've done that.
You can tell it, the style that you want it to put it out in. It's not going away, and I don't want to say I guarantee, but I know other publications they're using it somehow, some way. It's just
I'm sure we will. Right now, I said I wasn't terribly impressed, but I haven't tried some of the edits you just mentioned. I just edit myself. Like if they give me this long, flowery piece, I just cut out a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because I know people's time today is short.
That's right.
And if I send them a letter or an email, it needs to get to the point
that's right.
pretty quickly.
That's right, yeah.
I'm gonna still look into it.
Yeah, and you can tell, and I'll tell you what, I can tell like when people use it for social media posts for their businesses, I can tell what's been written by AI and what hasn't been.
Uh-huh.
Like there are certain like little flags to me of like, okay, that was AI written.
Now, photography, I have embraced.
Yeah?
You won't believe how good it can take old photographs.
Really?
And make them look great. I did a little publication for my family about the history of my mom and dad.
Okay.
The pictures were not good, obviously.
They're old, yeah.
They looked great after I took them through AI.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And we've done it for the magazine, too. When you get an old black and white that's kind of...
That's perfect.
Got crinkles in
That's
it
right.
and
Grainy.
scratches.
Yeah.
It takes all that out.
Yeah. What about, so goals for personal goals, retirement, potentially in the next 5 years? What about overall? Where else do you see, the quarterly magazine going and then your other publications as well?
I'd love to grow the company some more. But like I said, there are so many opportunities out there, and they're limited. So, but if anybody would ever want to do a publication, I'm open to doing it.
Yeah.
We've done some side projects. We've done annual reports for people, not every year, but here and there. We did a book last year for St. Mary's, their 100th anniversary.
Yeah.
That was really a lot of fun to work on.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of great, cool historic photos. Man, I wish we'd had AI. When we did that book, they hadn't come out with AI software for photos yet.
Yeah. Where can people that are listening, where can they go to learn more about your magazine and also in the publishing in general?
They can get an online subscription by going to huntingtonquarterly.com, or if they want to see a hard copy, there's only maybe half a dozen places around town we sell it. Empire Books, which is now the Inner Geek,
Mm-hmm.
The Marshall Bookstore, the St. Mary's and Cabell gift shops, the Huntington Museum of Art, or Red Caboose.
Okay. And that's our episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, share, and even leave us a 5-star review. Season 2 of In Your Business is presented by Moses Auto Mall of Huntington. Online at mosesmeansmore.com and powered by the Huntington Regional Chamber of Commerce and Kindred Communications.